Welcome back, my friends. Today on The Proof, I am joined by two incredible guests, Doug Evans, entrepreneur and sprouting advocate, and Jed Fahey, a nutritional biochemist whose research on broccoli sprouts and sulforaphane has shaped much of what we know today. Together, we explore why sprouts are such a powerful yet often overlooked food, how they impact human health, and how you can start incorporating them into your own routine today. From the lab to the kitchen counter, this is a conversation that connects science with everyday life. Please enjoy. We have the scientist and we have the force of nature.
Yeah. Are we recording?
Yeah.
Oh, we're on already?
Yeah, we're on. So you,
okay.
What do you mean you don't like logos? I love the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I'm so glad he wore that shirt today.
Yeah, flea is nice, but that's a subtle thing, and they need the amplification in 2025.
Oh, come on.
You don't need to scream it when you got it going on.
That's right.
Can you unpack that?
Yeah. It basically, I'm screaming so that I can get it going on. The sprouter is already going on. So we can be just subtle. But there's someone's going to pick it up and say, what is this? And I want that to be revealed in a subtle, embossed.
Well, I've been sprouting nonstop for like the last month when I'm in LA.
Yeah.
And I didn't notice that logo until just now with the right light.
It's the right light, yeah. Well, all right, Simon, this is your show. Let's go.
I mean, we're started. This is how we do it here.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, Simon, I am so grateful for your opening up your platform to and bring this esteemed scholar. If there ever was a broccoli scholar, it's Dr. Jed Fahey, the king, the grandfather of broccoli sprouts, sulforaphane, glucosinolates, phytochemicals. Like, this is the man.
It really is. And we somehow convinced him to fly out here to LA to be with us in person. And we've done an episode, 2 or 3 years ago?
I think it was 2022. I don't go back and revisit old episodes, but yeah.
Right. And we've had a couple episodes together. So now we get the opportunity to fully understand how this very small thing, a sprout, a seed actually, which has potentially very big benefits. We get to hear from the science, we get to hear from the practical aspect and how you're working to make all of this more accessible.
I think between the two of us, we have the biggest love affair with broccoli sprouts on the planet.
Yeah. And with all sprouts, and I think, Simon is a committed, devoted sprouter now. And look, I think what happened is that in regions, countries, cities where there wasn't disruption and mass immigration, people have been sprouting since the beginning of time. When I wrote the Sprout book, I discovered like the pharaohs and 5,000 years ago in Egypt, they were sprouting. But since I wrote the book and I started researching the book 8 years ago, I found out that there's been continuous sprouting in China for 5,000 years, in South Korea, in Japan, and in India. And in America, Australia, Europe, sprouting at best is considered a garnish or a side dish.
What does sprouting mean by definition if someone's hearing that and is unsure exactly what you mean?
So the beginning of all plant life are seeds, and seeds germinate and they convert through a metabolic process into a vegetable. So sprouting is a colloquialism that was developed to define this short stage of character. When you take a seed, you sprout it, germinate it, but you consume it while it's at the youngest stage within this 1 week period. Beyond the week, the sprout requires other outside inputs, fertilizer, soil, minerals, sunshine. But in this 1 week, there's a magical process where the meristematic stem cells of the plants germinate and all of this metabolic activity occurs. The insight that I had, and just a little insight, and I didn't discover sprouts or sprouting, my insight was that when most people were thinking of sprouts as a garnish or a side dish or a little superfood, I looked at sprouts as vegetables and as a food source. So I did this experiment to see in 1 cubic foot with 6 jars, I was growing thousands of calories a day of sprouts. And what is the sprout? I was taking alfalfa seeds, germinating them, broccoli seeds, germinating them, lentils, mung beans. And this was something that Dr. Fahey had been doing long before I ever heard of him. He was doing the same thing. And so was Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. Joel Kahn, even the Dr. Josh Axe, who wrote the keto book. They all were sprouting.
Why do you think as a society, as a culture, we see sprouts more as a garnish? Is it because they are quite low in calories per cup?
No. The reason why sprouts aren't like amplified until now is because the food industry in the United States is driven by profit. So if you were to go into an Albertsons or Whole Foods or even an Air One down the block where we went the other day.
The place is a vortex.
It's a vortex. 98% of what's in that store is in a bag, in a box, in a jar, in a can that's been cooked and pasteurized and refined. And sprouts are fresh. They are a complete living organism and they are fresh. So as a result, something that's fresh has a short shelf life, low margins, high returns. So there are no national or international sprouting companies in the United States or the world.
So we of course we don't know how much sprouting was really done in prehistory. We know it was done, but for example, in beer making, which I used to do all the time, you use sprouted barley. Why? Because you get more of the enzymes out of it. It's more nutritious. But I think you're absolutely right about why sprouts aren't more popular. Haven't been more popular, and that's because they just don't. You can't stick them on the shelf in a grocery store and have them last very long. Enter home sprouting, which is what we've been doing for a long time now, and you've developed into a fantastic countertop art for people that's easy.
How does a scientist and an entrepreneur cross paths? You mentioned that you guys have a giant love affair. What's the backstory here?
Not with each other, really, but with sprouts.
Well, there's also a bit of a love affair happening here as well. So what's the backstory here for people that are not clear? Like, how did you two kind of come together?
So I was writing the sprout book, and Dr. Fahey was, as I alluded to at the beginning, the foremost living expert in the world on broccoli sprouts and glucosinolates and isothiocyanates. And considering that I was starving and hungry for that information, and he had his phone number on the website.
I use the word invented broccoli sprouts. I did sort of invent them back in the mid 90s because no one else was making them and selling them, and no one talked about broccoli sprouts. So when we did that, we looked around. This was when I was at Johns Hopkins, where I've been for decades now. We looked around, and our best assessment was that a minuscule portion of the American populace ate sprouts. Same for Europe, same for really all the Western countries. And we couldn't figure out why that was. But that didn't stop us from trying to popularize them. And we got a little traction. We put a company on the map, Brassica Protection Products, that started co-manufacturing them with about 20 different sprouters. But as Doug alluded to, the problem is keeping them fresh on the shelf. You can't ship them you can't ship them across this country of ours. So you've got to have regional producers. We had a producer in Hawaii. We had someone in Europe. We had a number of them throughout the U.S. Still in all, you put a clamshell of 3 or 4 ounces of sprouts on the grocery store shelf, and first of all, it's hard to get people to buy them. Second of all, after 2 or 3 days, they start getting funky. And then the produce manager throws them away. And I don't know, what's the shrink on them? Something like 50% or more?
It's outrageous. And as a result, no one wants to do it. So it's only small little companies. And that's when I had the epiphany that the business model, like when you think about, forget about sprouts, when you think about produce in the United States, the average vegetable is traveling 2,000 miles across the country.
And what's happening to the nutritional content?
Well, that's the nutritional biochemist.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going down, down, down. I mean, because you've got it for weeks in storage. You've got ethylene gas as a ripener. You know, you pick them, or not you, but the farmer, the producer picks them not ripe yet, and then ripens them up in a container of ethylene gas. They're bred for shelf life and for uniformity and for resistance to certain pathogens. They're not bred for phytochemical content. And as a result, over the really centuries, but certainly in this century, you know, as you breed for more and more uniform stuff that all ripens at the same time, so you can harvest it with a mechanical harvester, nobody has tracked phytochemical content, be it glucoraphanin or anything else, in broccoli. So those phytochemicals get lost by the wayside with cycles and cycles of breeding.
And you can feel it. Like if you look at a leaf of lettuce, like a romaine lettuce or spinach, if you pull it out of a garden, it's really like fresh and crispy and alive. You look at any, salad that comes in a clamshell or in a plastic bag, it's already lame.
So your hypothesis is that we want to increase our phytochemical exposure, and one of the best ways of doing that is to shorten the time between the growth of the plant, harvesting, and when we consume it?
Yes and no.
As well as how we grow it.
How we grow it. So I would say it's not a hypothesis. It's dogma. It's fact, man. But we're going to double click on that, and I want to walk through that. Okay.
Because you said not bred for phytochemical content, and there's a lot in that for us to unpack.
That's true.
Can you define phytochemicals for Simon?
Yeah, phytochemicals are all of the chemicals. Okay, look, you're made of 100% of chemicals. So are you, so am I. In the human body, most of those chemicals are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, and collagen and stuff like that, right? We can name them. It's a short list. Much lower amounts of vitamins and minerals. Same thing with plants.
That statement in and of itself, I think, will take people by surprise, given that when you hear the word chemical, immediately, I think the knee-jerk reaction is something toxic, not protein.
Inorganic chemicals.
Right. And I get tired. I get tired of hearing people say, I don't want any chemicals in my food. Well, your food's 100% chemicals. It's a question of what chemicals. So phytochemicals then, or phytonutrients, is sort of a gentler non-chemical name, or even bioactives. They are all the other stuff besides vitamins, minerals, which is a short list, 40 or so, proteins, carbohydrates, fats, and what am I missing? Fiber.
Soluble and insoluble.
And we can subdivide all of this stuff, but it's everything but them. And there are 20, 25 years ago at a Phytochemical Society meeting of America, somebody asked the question, how many phytochemicals are there? And all these old gray hairs went around the room and said, guessed. And the consensus guess was 50,000. Consensus guess today is over 5 million. And these are documented by modern forensic technology, if you will. So let me go back to the issue of taste in phytochemicals. One of my absolute favorite things to do in Maine, where I live, is to, in about September, October, walk along old country roads and pick scabby-looking old apples off old orchard trees that have been there for a century or two. And some of them are sour as heck. Some of them are absolutely delicious. But I'll take one of them any day over a Golden Delicious from the supermarket, organic or not.
So what's that relationship between like a harsh environment and the phytochemical content?
The relationship is
you could grow sprouts without soil, sunshine, or fertilizer in days for under $1 a serving, and When we talk about whole foods, like people think like, oh, fresh broccoli is a whole food, but it's actually part of the broccoli plant. When you're consuming a broccoli sprout, you are consuming the entire living organism, the root, the shoot, the endosperm, the embryo, and it's enzymatically active and it's alive.
Whether you're training hard or simply aiming to feel your best every day, IM8 Daily Ultimate Essentials has you covered. It's the daily multi-nutrient that I've recently switched to and now recommend. With 92 bioavailable nutrients, including vitamin B12, vitamin D, iodine, choline, K2, CoQ10 for heart health, and MSM for joint recovery. It is NSF certified for sport. It ships to over 30 countries, including the United States, Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, and works with both plant-based and omnivorous diets. I've used several multi-nutrients over the years, but IM8's clean formulation and commitment to science and clinical validation really stood out. So much so that I've joined their scientific advisory board alongside Dr. David Katz and Dr. Suzanne Devcoda, two previous guests of The Proof. For listeners of The Proof, IM8 is offering 10% off your first Daily Ultimate Essentials order with the code SIMON at checkout. Just head to im8health.com. That's IM8, HEALTH.com, and use promo code SIMON to get started. Howdy friends, I would love your help. You know this, we know this. There are ads on our podcast here at The Proof. That is what allows us to bring all of these episodes to you at zero cost. We're always looking for new ways to make this experience better for you. But to do that, we need to know a little bit more information about you and the things that you like and perhaps don't like. To help with that, we've created a survey. This survey will help us understand the type of guests and topics that you enjoy most. It's quick, easy, and a really meaningful way to support the show. So if you would like to help shape the show and the brands that we partner with, please head to voicingchange.media/the proof to fill out our audience survey. That's voicingchange.media/the proof.
Phytochemicals evolve, these 50,000 to 5 million phytochemicals evolved over, millennia to protect to do a number of things, to protect plants from predators. So one of the things is a potential, a bug, a beetle, or a fungus or a bacteria chomps on the plant part, and they get something that makes them go.
AKA the anti-nutrients.
Yeah. And some of them are even called phytoalexins. So that's one thing. Another thing is all of the color you see in plants is from phytochemicals. Talk about beta carotene or lutein or chlorophyll. Those are all phytochemicals. All the odors or smells in plants, which make them attractive, pleasant, fragrant, attract some pollinator bugs, repel others, those are all phytochemicals. So really, all of the things, and everything that makes plants interesting and beautiful, look out the window and look at any plant you see. You're not looking, you're looking structurally at proteins and cell walls and cellulose, but all of the beauty of it essentially is coming from phytochemicals.
And if someone's thinking, if these phytochemicals are part of a plant's defense system, how can they be a benefit to a human that consumes them?
We human beings are remarkable in our ability to utilize these chemicals. For some of them, we interconvert them. Our gut microbes change them a little bit. Some of them that might be toxic are rendered non-toxic. So, if you look at the world of edible plants, essentially all of the phytochemicals in reasonable amounts in edible plants are okay for you. The human body's evolved to metabolize them, and they repurpose a lot of those compounds for their own. Humans or other animals repurpose those compounds for their own good. Are there toxic plants? Of course. Those aren't on the compendium of edible plants. You can have a pile of edible and a pile of inedible plants. You want to eat poison ivy? I don't know if there's any nutritional value, but I think you're going to be in a heap of hurt.
Right. And similar like with mycelium and fungi, right? You could have psychedelic mushrooms, you could have medicinal mushrooms, and you can have poison mushrooms. But in particular,
and those aren't, I guess we wouldn't call them phytochemicals. They're mycochemicals or something.
But yeah. For example, since he loves mushrooms, but in particular, if you look at the hermetic effect, like in particular, broccoli sprouts and the sulforaphane actually generate heat shock proteins and have create hormesis. So can you elaborate on that hermetic effect of the broccoli sprouts?
Put a pin in that. I still have some things to clarify first. So we were talking there about the importance of phytochemicals, and we were talking about what's happening in the grocery stores today. And you said that mostly the vegetables that are in our grocery store are not bred for phytochemical content. So a couple questions. Yeah. What are they bred for? And as a result of the way that we're growing food, do we understand through science that human phytochemical exposure, has that changed over the last 50 years or so?
Starting at the beginning of your question, plants are bred by modern plant breeders and have been for quite some time to resist pathogens that are endemic or local to the area they're grown. So you go to the Salinas Valley in California, and whatever nasties are there that attack certain plants that are grown there, you want to breed so that you find a resistant plant or a plant that doesn't get wiped out by a certain fungus, and you breed that ahead. So that's probably one of the number one things that breeders look for. Over modern time, they've certainly bred for uniformity of the harvestable part. So the best example, actually broccoli is a good example. Broccoli plants can, be this high or this high, and the heads can be at different points, or corn. Corn's probably the best example, and it's so widely grown. You look at a cornfield in Iowa, and all of the ears are coming out at, eye height or, a certain height. And the combine can go through and get them all pretty efficiently, very efficiently. And that's the name of the game in modern farming.
Shelf life.
They're bred for shelf life and shippability, really. And they're also, unfortunately, and nobody may admit this, but many fruits certainly are bred for sweetness, for sugar.
Sweetness and looking good.
Well, looking good and looking uniform. I mean, uniform's huge in the vegetable business, but sweetness equals acceptability in the American consumer's mind. And American consumers are a good bit different than consumers in the rest of the world. Doug, one of the things we didn't mention is that sprouts have been historically thought of as a garnish in this country, but in Japan, where your T-shirt's from, they are, you buy sprouts at the local corner stores. It's not called 7-Eleven in Japan. Lawson's is the big, one of the big chains. You buy sprouts there.
I visited there, Hiroshima and Nagasaki and Tokyo. Yeah. Broccoli sprouts are available in over 20,000 retailers across the country. And they're selling more in a country of 8 million than in the entire United States. In Japan.
Yeah. They also have one of the best education systems for teaching children about healthy food as well.
They do.
Well, when we go to Japan, when the sprouting company launches in Japan, like the only reason why we are delaying a launch in Japan is because it would create a global shortage of broccoli seeds. So we have to literally start planning today so that we have enough seeds to cover Japan, because it's just going to transform everything when everyone knows. Like here, the amazing thing, and I'm going to take a pause, so please continue your conversation.
Sure, and just quickly on that, when you do launch, I will happily go over there as an ambassador and get some snowboarding in.
As will I, sir.
You can do snowboarding. I'm going to do snowball fights.
Okay.
They got the world record team in snowball. They have a machine that makes the snowballs.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Anyway, Jed, bring us back to the science, man.
I just wanted I wanted to say, I don't usually
Hold
do
on.
this. But
Just because your normal podcast puts people to sleep, like it's okay that we're adding some humor and some life. We're human.
That's true. Hey, I do have the odd dad joke here or there.
Okay.
So maybe I'll bring one out today.
Okay, please continue.
So I don't usually do this, but you can pat me on the back right now. Would you like to? Okay, thank you.
I love this, man.
And the reason you're doing that is because you can thank me for introducing broccoli sprouts to Japan. I mean, literally, because when we started sprouting with broccoli sprouts, the Japanese market was very hot for radish sprouts and pea sprouts and some other sprouts, but mung bean, of course. They're done a little differently, of course, but there were no broccoli sprouts there, and actually there was a foodborne illness outbreak in radish sprouts or daikon sprouts right about the time we launched the company, and at that point they were looking for something instead of radish sprouts, and broccoli sprouts have, as you know, become hugely popular, including broccoli super sprouts, which are broccoli sprouts with highest levels of glucoraphanin or sulforaphane. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
I think radish sprouts are probably my favorite.
Are they?
I love that spicy kind of bite.
They have the glucoraphanin.
Is that how you pronounce it, Jed? We're going to go to Jed for pronunciations.
Yeah, please.
Glucoraphanin.
But
that's okay.
Thank God.
It's like having a referee here.
It's only different by like one double bond, if that's meaningful.
So, Jed, so you're a biochemist.
Yeah,
is that right?
I want to just take a note that Jed, when he was at Johns Hopkins, he was doing research. He had advanced degrees, but he realized that no one, when he was 50 years old, no one would take you seriously unless you had a PhD. So at 50 years old, having worked on it, he pursued his PhD. That
gives me hope, Jed.
Well, I'll have to correct Doug yet again. I mean, shit.
Okay, I'm going to put my hope on pause.
Okay.
I'm taking it back.
Okay.
So, yeah, I had a master's degree in botany from a long time ago. I actually got my doctorate in 2005 when I was 50. And I chose not to go and cross the stage and get my diploma at that time because my son was getting his college diploma on that same day. So I was 50 when I got it. I didn't start on it at 50.
We're all learning.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be 60. All I can say is I'm going to be 60. So
you're going to be 60.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a little bit like
my next birthday, just to be clear. Because we'll all be 60.
Right.
Or Jed was 60 at one point.
I've got to get that number on my Google Calendar. All right.
Was your on-ramp sulforaphane? Is that the initial on-ramp? I think were you working underneath a mentor?
I was. My mentor was Paul Talalay. He was a physician, a medical doctor, cancer specialist. And he, in the 1980s, realized, gets huge credit from the cancer prevention community. He realized that certain compounds in edible foods, especially fruits and vegetables, might be protective against various cancers. And he determined at that time that the epidemiologic literature supported that. So it was viewed as sort of a heretic statement. You can prevent cancer with food? What? Of course, now we all accept that. So he started looking at a variety of fruits and vegetables and he had actually just discovered sulforaphane in broccoli. He and his physician, who was a student from China, Yushin Zhang. And in 1992, they published on that, and it was a big deal. And they did a variety of studies showing that it could be preventive against cancer, not in humans, but in model systems. And then Paul was looking for someone to come and help him work on making a better broccoli. So as a card-carrying botanist, plant physiologist, I was attracted. I had been working on broccoli in the early 80s with a joint project with the Canadian government. And I realized quickly that you don't grow, breed, harvest, and test a lot of broccoli in Baltimore, Maryland in the middle of the winter. So I started screwing around with broccoli seeds in the lab and growing little plantlets, and determined that, wow, broccoli sprouts are way more loaded with the precursor to sulforaphane than market stage broccoli,
which is glucoraphanin.
Glucoraphanin, right? And no pronunciation disagreement there.
That's right.
And
we're aligned over here, Doug.
we're good.
Do you say, how do you pronounce sulforaphane?
Sulforaphane.
Sulforaphane?
So it's a sulforaphane. Okay.
Yeah, but we give a lot of leniency to Aussies.
I just want anyone to say it.
Yeah. A lot of people call it sulforaphane, and I don't challenge them. It's okay.
I mean,
okay.
it doesn't make it easy for people, these long words.
No,
Glucoraphanin, sulforaphane.
Yeah, but that's the whole reason we're doing this, right?
We want to make it easy.
We're trying to untangle some of this word,
the nomenclature.
Yeah.
So your mentor, you mentioned there, had become interested in the epidemiology, and I think most people are pretty kind of familiar with the idea that fruits and vegetables tend to associate with lower, like high consumption of fruits and vegetables associates with lower risk of really a variety of chronic diseases. Yes. Pick any, really.
All chronic.
Right, these chronic diseases. But how do you isolate the phytochemical component separate to, say, the vitamin, mineral, the fiber content of all of these fruits and vegetables? Like, what would the strongest evidence be that phytochemicals are having a significant effect on someone's chronic disease risk over their lifetime?
That's the $50 million question. That's a great question. So, yeah, let me just walk back to what Paul Talalay observed back in the 80s. And he observed that there were some specific chemicals. These were actually not phytochemicals. They were synthesized chemicals that were protective in a cell culture model. And then he looked at the epidemiology at the time, which very strongly suggested that, as you say, a protective effect of some fruits and vegetables against some cancers. There really wasn't much on other diseases. There was some stuff back then on soy, and there was a suspicion there was something in soy that was preventive in breast cancer and maybe prostate cancer. But to your question about how do you look at a specific phytochemical, you really have to isolate it and put it in a cell culture system or an animal test model first. I know a lot of people don't like using animal tests, rats and mice, but by and large, you cannot purify a phytochemical in the lab to 99% purity and give it to a person in a pill. So the question of doing an initial clinical trial is pretty dicey. You won't get funding, you won't get permission to do that. And for that reason, when we did our first clinical studies with people on sulforaphane, we were using broccoli sprouts or broccoli seeds or an extract made of them, because we could characterize those broccoli seeds or sprouts as having levels X, Y, or Z of glucoraphanin and sulforaphane, which it's converted to. We could use different doses and show a differential effect. A higher dose, you got a higher effect. And yes, there's an assumption made that the primary bioactive is, for example, sulforaphane. In some of those early trials, we used alfalfa sprouts as a negative control. The idea being that, yeah, they're similar in style and texture and so on. We know they don't have any sulforaphane or glucoraphanin in them, but they have a bunch of other phytochemicals.
But they have no glucosinolates.
No, none. That's categorically. But they have a bunch of other phytochemicals.
So is the assumption that I think you mentioned before, it's now thought there's over 1 million different phytochemicals. Was that right?
I think it's up to about 5 million.
Right. So is the assumption that some of those might be beneficial, some might be harmful, but when you're consuming them in a fruit or a vegetable, the net effect of those fruits and vegetables seem to be positive. But if you were to extract them and take them in a more concentrated form, is the effect of that relatively unknown unless it's tested?
I think that's fair to say. Yeah. I mean, so the company that for whom the company I advise actually called Brightseed, which is in the Bay Area in California, they're the ones who have done this categorization or identification of phytochemicals most recently and most grandly. I mean, they're the ones who've come up with this number of certainly over 1 million. I think it's fair to say that if you isolate a phytochemical from a plant that is not edible, you better damn well make sure that you've tested it to make sure there are no toxicities, there are no reports of toxicity of this plant in people, et cetera. If you isolate something from an edible plant, it's a little safer, but then it's all in the dose. As Doug asked me to define the word hormesis, and hormesis is the phenomenon whereby when you have take any compound, really, you have none of it, you're going to see no effect. If you have some of it, you may see an effect, and you may see a maximum effect. It's sort of a U-shaped curve. If you have even more, you may start to see detriment or toxicity.
So there's like a sweet spot with the dose.
There's a sweet spot, and with phytochemicals, we're talking about very low doses, but this is the same phenomena that drugs, manufactured drugs exploit. Take any drug, really.
Metformin.
Yeah, I mean, right. But I mean, take any drug. Take an anti-cancer drug. You take some, it may affect the cancer. You take 10 times that amount, it'll probably kill the person. So, yeah.
The other reason that it would seem that you would need to study an isolated phytochemical very carefully is that there are known interaction effects. So even like with sulforaphane, it's interacting at least with myrosinase, an enzyme.
Yeah. I mean, there was trials in the 1990s, specifically the ATBC and the carrot studies found that high dose beta carotene supplements increased lung cancer rates in smokers, leading research to stop the studies early. And the harm came from taking the isolated synthetic concentrated pill form. By contrast, beta carotene from whole foods like sprouts, carrots, leafy greens is delivered in synergy with hundreds, if not thousands, of other phytochemicals, fibers, and enzymes that stabilize and support the body's natural defenses.
When you consume it within a food.
Within a whole food.
Yep. That was read very well, Doug. And I mean, that was a landmark study. That was a landmark study.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I do, Jed. Like,
I know, dude. I know. But that was really a landmark study because it made people realize you can't just you have to be careful concentrating and putting stuff in pills.
Yeah, I mean, this is what happens is that we live in a society, and going back to like why sprouts aren't popular. The reason why sprouts aren't popular because there's never been a megaphone, there's never been dollars behind them. So what's popular are Fruit Loops and Cheerios and meat and things where there's enormous levels of profit. If you look at the average sugary carbonated beverage, what goes in the can or the bottle is the least of the cost. They're spending more money on packaging, on marketing, and on distribution than the raw ingredients. If you want fresh, whole vegetables that have a short shelf life and perishable, that's why, in a Whole Foods, they have 25,000 items. Only 500 of them are fresh. Right, so 98% is not fresh.
There's also a little bit of a palatability difference. I imagine once kids have started consuming Fruit Loops, it's a tough sell to get them to have a handful of broccoli sprouts.
That's a separate thing. It's the palatability is that our like reptilian brains are so easily manipulated, with fat, sugar, and salt to trigger the dopamine release, which is based on our historic scarcity of food supply.
Well, you both hit on a great point, and you both are familiar with the fact that I've advised this company, Food Nerd.
Thank you for that, by the way.
You're quite welcome. Their gig is taking. I think they have 50 fruits and vegetables that they minimally process and essentially into a dried puff. And the whole idea there, which I think was really brilliant, was to get infants and children, babies, familiar with the vibrant colors of fruit and veg, the smells, the tastes, not really the texture so much because these are puffs, because our reptilian brains get imprinted pretty quickly. And if they start liking this stuff, they may ask for, a banana or an apple.
I could say I had my daughter at 56 years old, and I wanted to see, I was really curious. I was loving my life, but it was really, part of being around all these seeds sprouting that I wanted to see, firsthand, the in utero flavor development. My wife ate really clean and healthy and ate sprouts through her pregnancy. It's then translated into, the breast milk. And when our daughter was 6 months old and started to consume solid food, her solid food were sprouts and fruits and vegetables with no aversion. And so the idea of eating fruits as a snack, she'll eat 3 mandarins, she'll, snack and have a cup filled this big, with sprouts, raw, no seasoning, etc. And she thinks that's food. And so
her brain doesn't know any different.
Her brain does not know. And what happens if you, give someone, and to me, there's no difference, between high fructose corn syrup, cane sugar, agave, or the like. It's all these refined sugars will have the same impact, as well as the salt. So where I'm looking at, and what I just got excited about, was you could grow sprouts without soil, sunshine, or fertilizer in days for under $1 a serving. And they were so fresh that you were consuming fresh items. And when we talk about whole foods, people think oh, fresh broccoli is a whole food, but it's actually part of the broccoli plant. When you're consuming a broccoli sprout, you are consuming the entire living organism, the root, the shoot, the endosperm, the embryo, and it's enzymatically active and it's alive, and it has the soluble and insoluble fiber and this array of phytochemicals, including in the sprout itself. The broccoli sprout has the glucoraphanin and the myrosinase. And by the natural process of chewing them, you open up the vacuoles and you create this sulforaphane.
What's the difference between mature broccoli and broccoli sprouts on a calorie per calorie type of basis in terms of the content of some of those nutrients? You are an incredible example of someone who you're nearly 60.
Yeah.
And I would agree. I think the most energy of any human I've ever met.
It's vitality. You get the vitality with the sprouts. And I could tell you, I wasn't always like this. During COVID, my sprouting game really went deep, and that's when I was hanging out with Jed while people were fighting over Coca-Cola and macaroni and cheese. I had 200 pounds toilet paper.
You can't really wipe your butt with sprouts.
No, but I had a bidet. I had a bidet. Bidet. I think I had one of the only geothermal mineral hot springs bidets. It was very comforting. So I had a bidet.
It's quite the experience.
Hey, you could try it, Simon.
I recently ran my full labs through Function Health, And I have to say the results were eye-opening. Turns out my ApoB was higher than ideal, probably thanks to a little too much coconut yogurt. I also found out I was slightly low in copper, something that I would have never suspected without testing. On the flip side, my biological age came back 13.3 years younger than my actual age, a calculation based on the work of aging researcher Dr. Morgan Levine. So all in all, I've got a few tweaks to make to optimize my lipids and nutrient status, but overall my blood work says I'm doing pretty well. That's what I love about Function. You get access to over 160 biomarkers covering everything from hormones and inflammation to nutrients, toxins, cardiovascular risk, and more. And all your results are housed in one beautiful platform, all tracked over time. Once you get your results, you can make informed changes before small issues become big ones. To get started, head to functionhealth.com/Simon Hill. The first 1,000 people get a $100 credit toward their membership. That's functionhealth.com/Simon Hill.
So the interesting thing, and I'll let Jed elaborate on this, is that the broccoli seed contains the glucoraphanin. And that seed, you could eat the seed and get the glucoraphanin. The high glucoraphanin seeds have up to 13%. High glucoraphanin broccoli seeds have up to 13% glucoraphanin in it. But they also have enzyme inhibitors, phytic acid, and lectins. So the process of sprouting them reduces all of those, much to, the advantage, of your other friend. The lectins go away. Smoking does not.
Which friend are you talking about?
The smoking helps cancer. The smoking reduces cancer, guy.
Okay.
So at any rate.
I know who you're talking about.
That's a hormetic effect. One cigarette's okay, but a pack
No,
isn't,
the
right?
problem is that there's a decreased mortality because the people aren't living long enough to get the Alzheimer's and the other diseases. But the essence of the broccoli sprouts having more glucoraphanin and more sulforaphane is as the plant gets larger and larger, the amount of glucoraphanin is getting diluted. There is no more being created, but you get more vitamin C, you get more fiber, you get more B vitamins, but the sulforaphane is finite.
So it depends what you're optimizing for.
Correct.
Yeah, but you asked about calories, comparable serving per serving, and I don't know that number. The USDA's website could tell us, but my guess is they're probably somewhat comparable in terms of calories for, a cup versus a cup. But clearly, there's no question that from a sort of standard macronutrient perspective, you're getting more protein from the broccoli sprouts. You may be getting a little bit of good fats compared to heads of broccoli, but yeah. So you're getting all of. I mean, this is the thing about eating fresh foods. You're getting all of the fiber.
Yeah, I mean, actually, at least a quick search, broccoli sprouts have about half in a cup of calories of the mature broccoli.
But it's still, we're talking about 15 to 30 calories
it's
range.
All. So that's actually what makes broccoli or broccoli sprouts very good for weight management.
They're high volume, low calorie, where the broccoli sprouts kind of trump the mature broccoli is that in that cup, you're getting a lot more of the sulforaphane precursor.
Correct.
Absolutely.
So coming back to your research, Jed.
Yep.
I consume a handful or a cup of broccoli sprouts, which contain glucoraphanin, along with this enzyme myrosinase. It goes into my mouth, starts going down into the stomach and then the small intestine. What's happening to these compounds? When is sulforaphane being formed? Where is it absorbed?
So assuming you're eating glucoraphanin, you're chewing, let's use a long word, masticating,
on the broccoli sprouts.
On the broccoli sprouts, or raw broccoli, not cooked broccoli.
What happens if you blended them into a smoothie and you were just drinking it?
Then it's just as if you were chewing them. Yeah. So you break the cells apart.
It's hydrolyzed.
Yeah. You break the cells apart. You release glucoraphanin is actually in vacuoles, little bags in the cell. You bust them open. Myrosinase is bound to membranes in the cell. They interact and they form sulforaphane. Where does that happen? It starts in the mouth as you're chewing. It's a fast reaction. You can get a better sense of how that works if you take mustard seed, just a dry mustard seed or a radish seed or something, and just chew it, and immediately, or actually raw wasabi is another good way to do it. You get that hot sensation up here. How much of that enzyme survives transit through the stomach, we're not sure, but when you are eating the enzyme with a bunch of food, certainly a good bit of it survives. And more conversion happens in the small intestine based just on your releasing it from the sprouts. When it gets to the large intestine, which is hours to perhaps a day or so later, then the bacteria in the large intestine or the colon also have myrosinase activity, and they chow down on glucoraphanin. So if you were to take a supplement that was supplying glucoraphanin, and that's how most supplements, dietary supplements that deliver these compounds have to work, because sulforaphane just isn't stable enough to put in a pill or a drink. So if you're taking just glucoraphanin, it trucks on down through the pipes, and it doesn't start to get converted until it hits as best we can tell in humans, the large intestine, unless you supply myrosinase with it, in which case, as long as that myrosinase is protected, it starts acting down there.
So if it's coming along with myrosinase, either through consuming broccoli sprouts or a supplement that contains both, then you'll absorb more sulforaphane into circulation than if you were just to consume glucoraphanin?
You absorb it in a different place. And we don't fully understand all the dynamics of that. But I mean, if you just visualize, you're chewing broccoli sprouts or market stage heads, stuff starts happening, sulforaphane starts being produced. I'll back up from the camera to anthropomorphize this, but sulforaphane starts being produced as you go down. More and more and more is produced or released and absorbed in that part of the gastrointestinal tract. If you take a pill that is, slow release or acid resistant, then the two compounds aren't going to meet each other until they get through the stomach into the small intestine. And I believe most of the activity is going to happen right there in the small intestine. And we have, it's called pharmacokinetics. We have clinical evidence to support that, because we see the biggest peak of sulforaphane earlier when you do that versus when you just take glucoraphanin.
And this is like so interesting, because I love growing my own food. I love the sprouts. And then what happened is there was all of these people that had needs for the benefits of broccoli sprouts, but they didn't have the desire or the proclivity to grow their own sprouts. So I went to Jed and I took the playbook, and what I didn't like about the other like broccoli sprout supplements that were on the market was when they said they had stabilized sulforaphane, Jed was like saying, no, it's BS. It like didn't work. So I went back and forth for years, and finally, we sat with Complement and said, okay, if we can take broccoli seeds, high glucoraphanin broccoli seeds, and then we could take mustard seed, and then we can add other parts of the brassica family for complementary phytochemicals, the Brussels sprouts and kale, and then add quercetin and camu camu. This was something that someone could take every day to get a health benefit, or they could even get a medicinal dose, therapeutic dose of the sulforaphane.
Can we come back to the science a little bit here?
Yeah.
Because I never answered your question about mechanism.
I think people, and myself included, really need to understand, once sulforaphane gets into circulation, what's happening. So what are the benefits that are up for grabs, and how do we understand that through science? Like some of them.
Yep.
Clearly not all of them. This is not going to be a 3-hour episode on sulforaphane. And from there, how have we been able to deduce what is the optimal dose, whether it's a supplement or whether it's consuming broccoli sprouts itself, to deliver what would be a beneficial effect? Because earlier you mentioned that much of these phytochemicals have a kind of hormetic effect where there is a certain sweet spot, and then after that it could have a deleterious effect. So if you could help us understand the benefits that are up for grabs and then how we think about dosing, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I apologize. When you asked that question a few minutes ago, we got off on a sidetrack of talking about myrosinase.
That's okay. We sidetracks are okay. We just bring it back.
Bring it home.
Yeah.
Land the plane, Jed. So it's translate. What's a dose?
No, we got to talk about the mechanism before the dose, though. I think so. There are many mechanisms by which sulforaphane acts. Probably the most well-studied one at this point is via this so-called NRF2 pathway.
NRF2.
Or NRF2. And this is a pathway that is in all humans, and it is one of the critical detoxification pathways in the body. And sulforaphane acts by upregulating that pathway or boosting it. And what I mean by that is, this pathway is going on in your body, and when it sees sulforaphane, it goes even more.
It's like putting the foot on the accelerator of that.
It's like putting the foot on the accelerator. And one of the things we've learned in clinical studies that we've done in China is that you can keep your foot on the gas pedal, and you don't exhaust the body's ability to upregulate that pathway. We've dosed daily with glucoraphanin and sulforaphane for 3 months and saw really essentially no reduction.
There's no rebound. Response. Like if you were then to stop the broccoli sprout supplement, it's not going to have damaged that endogenous kind of production.
Correct. And so this NRF2 pathway is, as I say, extremely critical. It's an upregulation of part of the DNA that leads to production of a suite of something like 500, this is not an exaggeration, but about 500 protective proteins and enzymes. Most of them are enzymes involved in detoxification, antioxidant, and included in that suite of enzymes are the enzymes in the glutathione pathway. Glutathione is your body's most important and most prevalent antioxidant. I know you've got another question, but I want to tell you that there are other pathways too, and some of those.
Wow, I cancel the next podcast. Let's keep going.
sorry, Dan Sofer. No,
but so let's.
I have a lot of questions, James.
He's here. He's here.
So, well, I mean, just to kind of butt in there and interject. So this story here is about sulforaphane is upregulating the body's own kind of antioxidant pathway and production of antioxidants as opposed to being a direct antioxidant itself.
Correct. And thank you for that entree to a little soapbox that I would like to get on. You may be aware of this, but when you take a direct antioxidant like vitamin C and you look at what happens in your body, you take it, it's absorbed. You can see it being excreted in the urine within a couple of hours, and it does its thing. It's the antioxidant thing. So if you wanted to have vitamin C as an antioxidant 24/7, you'd need to be mainlining it.
IV.
Mainlining it, taking it all the time. Sulforaphane, we call an indirect antioxidant. And the reason we call it that is because, as I mentioned, it induces or upregulates these protective enzymes via the NRF2 pathway, but that doesn't even matter what the name of the pathway is. When you upregulate protective enzymes, those enzymes stick around for hours to days in your body, and they work for hours to days. They're like little Pac-Men You're too young to. You
No,
both
I'm not.
almost too
I
young
played
to remember
Pac-Man.
Pac-Man.
He's world champion.
I grew up in America for the first 8 years of my life, and believe it or not, and I'm not sure whether I should be proud of this because it's not the healthiest of food, but I used to go to Fuddruckers and play Pac-Man all the time.
I think I saw you there.
We used to
all these years later, we're swapping those burgers for Sprouts.
Well,
Didn't see that coming.
In the early 80s, when I was working in Syracuse, New York, in a biotechnology group, almost all of us used to go across the street to a very, very seedy bar for lunch and play Pac-Man and Pac-Man Jr. Mrs. Pac-Man came on. Anyway, so you got these enzymes. They're like Pac-Man. They chomp, 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 and eventually they're going to get destroyed, but it takes hours to days. And so these are all potent antioxidant pathways that are upregulated. So very critical. Just to give you a flavor for some of the other pathways that are affected by sulforaphane, and literally I have a full page in a paper outlining the different pathways. But Doug mentioned heat shock protein a while ago. This is an important protein, we think perhaps in autism and some other conditions. And we know sulforaphane is effective in autism. We're not sure in humans how useful sulforaphane is in upregulating heat shock proteins as a practical matter, but that's a very different pathway that upregulates. We know it kills Helicobacter pylori, which causes ulcers and stomach cancer widely in Asia. And we've done these studies. We did a clinical study in Japan and showed this. Unfortunately, it doesn't kill them all, so they do bounce back. But still, it may reduce the need.
But that could be just an invitation for more testing because they're bouncing back. So you literally have to keep up. It's like, with any sort of treatment, like yesterday's shower isn't going to stop you from stinking today.
It could. So,
I want to take note of that. No, I'm just kidding, mate. You smell great.
I know. I just did some push-ups though.
But is it the NRF2 pathway that is thought to explain the potential sort of chemoprotective or cancer protective effect of sulforaphane?
Yes, the prime factor. But I mean, I just mentioned Helicobacter. That is one of the prime agents of stomach cancer, as you mentioned, in Asia. And so if you can kill Helicobacter and not do anything else, then you're affecting a cancer protection there.
What would the strongest evidence be that broccoli sprouts or sulforaphane could be useful in preventing cancer or treating cancer?
I think the strongest evidence is a combination of clinical studies that we and others have done and epidemiology. And so breast cancer, prostate cancer, probably liver cancer.
Prevention or treatment?
Prevention. I'm going to be much more circumspect when talking about treatment because I really, I don't want people to get the idea that, smoke a pack of cigarettes and eat a handful of broccoli sprouts and you'll be okay.
Has anyone done clinical trials with sulforaphane in cancer patients, or that hasn't been studied?
Yes, with prostate cancer. And there we were looking at, I collaborated with a group at Oregon Health Sciences University, and then another group in France, a European group that did this. They were looking at men with a diagnosis of prostate cancer, and they were looking at the trajectory of their PSA levels. So PSA, or prostate-specific antigen, is when you track it, if it starts going up fast, you probably have a problem and you better be seen. Likewise, after you've been treated for prostate cancer, it's monitored very carefully and very regularly. And so if that level stays sort of subdued, then you're okay. And the comparison was that with sulforaphane, that level stayed nice and flat longer.
But another way is like one of the things, like for me, and as we've been working on the broccoli sprouts, broccoli seeds, broccoli sprout supplements, was prevention and early is the best. It's like putting out a candle versus a forest fire.
And so how does someone think about, coming back to dose, if prevention is the goal, like what's the optimal amount of broccoli sprouts to have per day, or the optimal amount of sulforaphane if we're thinking about a supplement? How do we look at the literature, the body of evidence, understanding the biology, some of these mechanisms, NRF2, production of glutathione, all these things, and like, is there a way for us to look at that even from animal literature and then deduce, okay, in humans this is probably a sensible dose?
Yep. Let me give you a little bit of history. I'll be quick.
I love history. Let's go.
I'll be quick. And by the way, I've got to come back to a pet project of mine. You guys have a bigger platform than I do. So before we quit, it's completely unrelated. It's related to phytochemicals, but and don't get me started on ultra processed foods, because then we'll take all day. But in terms of dose, our very first clinical studies with broccoli, we had to guide based on the epidemiology, because when you do a clinical study, you go to an ethical review board and you say, this is what I propose to do. Is it okay? These are real live people. We don't want to harm them. So the epidemiology at the time said very clearly that, and this goes back to the early 70s, that 2 servings of broccoli a day, just generic broccoli, not really accounting for how much glucosinolate was in them, glucoraphanin, gave about a 50% reduction in the risk of colorectal cancer. And this was replicated in a number of studies. Similar results with breast cancer. So we calculated what an average serving of broccoli would contain in terms of micromoles and milligrams and all our scientific jargon. And we said, okay, well, we can at least give this much in a known format, broccoli sprouts or broccoli sprout extract, and be safe, and maybe have some efficacy. And so that actually winds up being a sweet spot that many of the clinical studies have zeroed in on. And the reasons why that's done are a little bit obtuse and a little bit, people may find it objectionable or they may find it very safe. But, when you have a few successful clinical studies with a certain amount of a phytochemical, then you're really hard pressed to say, let's double that or let's triple it. And nobody wants to do that because you may fall off the peak of that U-shaped curve. So, these studies are expensive, clinical studies. So you wind up getting the majority of studies sort of focused in that range.
And that range was, again?
2 servings a day of broccoli, market stage broccoli or broccoli sprouts.
50 to 150 micromoles.
What does this look like practically?
30 to 50 milligrams of glucoraphanin in the supplement. And turns out.
Here. So let me just say, you could take 2 these pills, or you could have a cup.
Okay, so this is it's a cup of broccoli sprouts, or the equivalent in a supplement, which turns out to be 2 capsules. And do you think the effectiveness of the supplement is equal to that of the sprouts?
I'm an advocate of whole foods and fresh foods. And so I would prefer, for people who will eat them, I would prefer that people eat fresh sprouts or fresh broccoli. The problem is, in this country especially, a hell of a lot of people don't eat very many vegetables or don't like them. And as a society, we're into supplements, and a lot of people take supplements. And so I like supplements of sulforaphane or glucoraphanin for 2 reasons. One is it's an insurance policy. You can be like, on this trip here, I didn't get my sprouts for 2 days.
Do you want a sulfura now?
Yeah. I had something.
That's the other thing. If we miss a day, is that a problem?
No, I think that's, there's a nice tail, like it lasts in the body for 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, when I wrote the book, when I wrote the sprout book, plug myself, I bought broccoli sprouts from a lot of different people. I read Jed's work and Dr. Tell. It's so fun.
There's so many
So many props.
products in front of Doug. It's starting to feel like a TV show.
Well, that's because he hasn't written a follow-up
I can
book,
tell you,
right?
this is not a promotion.
No. But the point is, when I was writing the book, I was talking about sulforaphane and I was researching it. And then when I took seeds from many different suppliers, and Jed had made a comment on the Rhonda Patrick website, on the Rhonda Patrick podcast, oh, well, consumers don't test and nothing was tested. So I invested the capital and I sent out 4 sets of samples to a lab to be tested for glucoraphanin levels. And the lab that Jed recommended, exact labs, plugging them. And
I feel like we should have a 1-800 number on the screen right now. 1-800-SPROUTS.
Yeah, the QR code.
Subscribe today. Terms and conditions to apply.
So one of the levels came back with 30 micromoles. One came back with 50. And then one came back with 70. And then the fourth one had 0 glucoraphanin in what was sold to me as certified organic broccoli seeds. So then I called Jed. What's happening is like, well, it could be something else. So we sent it to another lab where they sequenced the DNA and they said, well, this is in the brassica family, but it is not broccoli.
So point being, if you're buying broccoli seeds and they're not coming with some type of third-party testing, you don't even know what you're buying.
Well, yeah, that's where it took 5 years for me to track down and source a high glucoraphanin, certified high glucoraphanin broccoli seed that actually delivered, over 100 micromoles of glucoraphanin.
So since you mentioned it, and this is not a commercial message for anything, but when I started my work with broccoli sprouts, when we announced that we were forming a company to sell broccoli sprouts, and when we had our first paper on this in 1997 in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, and it got on the front page of the New York Times, all of a sudden the spot market for broccoli seed was completely gone. I mean, there was no broccoli seed left. And within 2 weeks of that announcement, there were, I think we counted 20 different products on the internet that claimed to cure cancer. Broccoli cures cancer. False, wrong. We don't know that. And we got those, we did the same thing you did. We got those products and tested them ourselves. And there was a range of things. Many of them didn't have broccoli in them, and so on. So back to your question about sprouts or supplements, another benefit of taking supplements is that if you go with a company that has quality assurance and third-party testing, you have a known amount of sulforaphane. If you grow your own seeds from a source that has been tested, a seed source that have been tested, same thing. If you go to any of the chain supermarkets and buy a package of broccoli sprouts, you have no idea what you're getting. Same thing with market stage broccoli. You have no idea, and we've tested them ad nauseum for years and years and years, and you just can't tell.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
You guys should look at the NSF certification. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
So this is already third-party tested, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So NSF certification for sport is like it's becoming very popular now for this reason, because clearly across the supplement industry, this is a widespread problem. A lot of brands are claiming that they contain certain active ingredients. Yep. They either don't contain them, or they're too low, or they contain a lot of harmful contaminants. And NSF, you might be aware of them.
Yeah. And the Clean Label Project too, right?
Yeah. The NSF certification is the one that now, if you're an NBA player, MLB or NFL, they only take supplements that have an NSF certification. So it goes through and they test for like 100 banned substances, Doug, along with making sure that all the actives are at the right level. But it's a quality assurance for the customer, because ultimately what you're speaking to here is it's a problem when you're spending money on supplements and
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
you're not actually getting what you're
Well,
paying for.
I mean, that was the whole thing, for it. So I think for me, I travel a lot. I'm working, so I'm sprouting as much as I can, but I'm taking, 2 sulfura supplements every day, just as an insurance policy, because I know the impact. Like, I can feel the difference. Like, I went away for 5 days without it, and I felt the difference. So I think the idea is, the magic of the sprouting is that for under $1 serving, you're getting food, you're getting calories, you're getting micronutrients, phytonutrients, you're antioxidants, you're getting food. And then you're also getting these other benefits. But, it's a hard press to get the average person to sprout. Although, now, like, there's this phenom happening, where it's building because people are seeing the resistance to ultra processed food. People want to know where their food is coming from. So if you take a certified organic seed and you sprout it and you're getting the food on your own countertop, like, that clicks. And that's why, you never sprouted until a few months ago.
Well, I did on and off, but now here, once I got your sprouting kits, I've begun to do it more regularly.
Yeah. Well, and how do you feel? How do you like it?
And Mike influenced me quite a bit on that.
I mean, Mike Posner went from literally, eating a clean keto diet, and then he was in pain. And, we started to hang out, and he was like, I want your energy. Like, I want to feel like that. So he starts, like, reaching over and grabbing my sprouts. And then next thing you know, he becomes a sproutarian.
So let's go back to dose for a minute.
Let's go back to
keep us-
dose, but I will say you are an incredible example of someone you're nearly 60.
Yeah.
And I would agree. I think the most energy of any human I've ever met.
It's vitality. Like, you get the vitality with the sprouts. And I could tell you, I wasn't always like this. Like, I have now tuned in to, like, the total abundance consciousness. Like, during COVID, like, my sprouting game really went deep. And that's when I was hanging out with Jed while people were fighting over Coca-Cola and macaroni and cheese. I had 200 pounds toilet paper.
You can't really wipe your butt with sprouts.
No,
though.
but I had a bidet. I had a bidet. I think I had one of the only geothermal mineral hot springs bidets. It was very comforting. So I had a bidet.
It's like quite the experience.
Hey, you could try it, Simon. And so we had that, but I had 200 pounds of seeds. So we were getting an abundance of food. There was no food scarcity when you have sprouts. And that's what this big thing is. It's not about, one serving or a book or anything. This is about, like, rediscovering nature's first food to enable anyone to have, like, normally if something is cheap, it's low quality, low nutritious, fast food does not have the most. But sprouts are one of the few things that have high nutrients, high fiber, low calorie, low fat, and low cost. So you can literally remove the barrier of economic consideration when it comes to sprouts.
Yeah.
Jed, let's bring Jed back into the game.
Well, I think the low cost is a great point. We shouldn't forget. Back to dose. I just wanted to point out that based on this NRF2 pathway and antioxidant detoxification, dosing or getting broccoli sprouts, having a serving or two of broccoli sprouts every other day or maybe even every third day is probably fine. But remember, things that we didn't have time to talk about, all these other mechanisms. So a number of them, probably it would be more beneficial to get dosed once a day.
I've had a bunch of friends ask me recently, Simon, do you actually rate 8 Sleep? So here's the truth. I would not promote 8 Sleep if it hadn't genuinely helped me. It has literally transformed my sleep. Since adding the Pod 4 Ultra and then more recently the Pod 5 Ultra to my bed, I've been waking up feeling fresh, clear-headed, less inflamed in the face and fingers, and ready to take on the day with enthusiasm, rigor, kindness, and patience, all good things. That's what a proper night of recovery does. It literally makes me a better human. The Pod 5 isn't a mattress. It's a high-tech cover that fits over your existing bed. It personalizes the temperature on each side, tracks your sleep stages, and even detects snoring, gently adjusting your position to help stop it. And now with the new Pod blanket, that same intelligent temperature control extends across your entire body. It's like sleeping in a cocoon that actively helps you recover. This is hands down one of the best investments I've ever made for my health. Head to 8sleep.com/theproof and use the code THEPROOF to get $350 off your Pod 5 Ultra. And you've got 30 days to try it. And if you don't like it, which I can't see happening, send it back for a full refund. Shipping to many countries worldwide. See details at 8sleep.com/theproof. Is there a outside of the box mechanism that perhaps you haven't spoken about on other podcasts with Rhonda Patrick, or people might be unaware of with sprouts, that just at a high level you think would be interesting for people to be aware of?
Yeah, antiviral against COVID and the common cold virus. And there's now evidence from colleagues at Johns Hopkins, this came out 2 or 3 years ago, showing that it was protective against SARS-CoV-2. This was back in the early days of the pandemic.
Yeah, this is a new kind of booster.
Yeah, I'll say, and boy, that had me keeping my broccoli sprout and supplement game in there.
But you couldn't talk about it.
And you still, unfortunately, this group at Hopkins has not followed it up with a clinical study. I wish they had. And
so it's a hypothesis at the moment?
No, well, it's based on cell culture and mouse studies.
Right.
So,
but I mean, how it plays out in humans is a little bit speculative.
It is a little bit speculative, but there's work that's been done by others, probably 5 or 6 papers.
Is that so it's somehow affecting the immune response?
Yeah. And ability of the virus to reinfect.
Just one thing on the practical, like we're in Los Angeles, we had
air pollution.
We had wildfires here. What does broccoli sprouts, either the supplement or the seeds, what does that do for someone exposed to smoking, secondhand smoking, or wildfires?
So let me tell you what we did in a number of trials in China, and the most recent one actually looked at the effect of increasing dose. We looked at a number of the common chemical constituents of the smoke, the pollution that was all over. This was near Shanghai, and so we looked at the urine and the blood of people in this trial. This was a trial I mentioned was over 3 months, and we found increased levels of metabolite detoxification products of benzene and acrolein. These are 2 of the common constituents of the smoke. So what does that mean? That means the bodies of these people that were on broccoli sprouts or glucoraphanin versus those that weren't was doing a better job of detoxifying the smoke. As I say, we did do a dose effect trial on that, and that supplements or substantiates this comment that we made about 2 servings a day or 30 to 50 milligrams of glucoraphanin. So we actually, and this is with my recently tragically deceased colleague Tom Kensler. Well, he and I and others have written a number of papers recently where we compared all of the clinical studies and all of the animal studies that have been done with sulforaphane and looked at the doses and the dose ranges. And yeah, I mean, we get a tenfold difference, or more than a tenfold difference in dose that people have given over the years, 20 years or so. And we tracked those studies which showed a positive effect and those studies which didn't. Okay, I got to go back to this isn't necessarily non-NRF2 effects, but we've seen dramatic effects in a very small N of 1 trial. This is not a formally sanctioned clinical trial, but one in which I believe 15 individuals reported their results in the non-motor symptoms of Parkinson's by people taking sulforaphane that they made in their kitchen. They had broccoli seeds. They digested them with the myrosinase from mustard seed, and they consumed the same dose every day, actually only once a week. They found once a week was a sweet spot.
And no one's tested that formally with a control?
Give me the money. I mean, this was done. This was a controlled trial, but
it was a controlled trial.
We didn't look, or they didn't look at blood levels of anything. They didn't verify the sulforaphane levels in the dose. They didn't collect urine and quantify, metabolites, but they fastidiously recorded symptoms and reduction in symptoms. And in fact, it led to a group in the U.S. that I'm helping out, a not-for-profit, which is trying to replicate that work in the U.S. This work was done in Switzerland with a guy who was a PhD chemist. He had formerly been climbing in the Alps. He was 78 when he got Parkinson's. He was bedridden for days at a time, all sorts of non-motor symptoms. I mean, he had some motor symptoms too. He started taking sulforaphane because he'd heard of our work, making it himself. And he went back to climbing in the Alps.
Wow.
A remarkable story.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, this is phenomenal. And other people in this group that he sponsored had similar, not as dramatic successes. But the other area where there have been really substantial effects is with autism. And there are many trials now, trials I was involved with a group at Harvard and then at Mass Medical Center, and also with a group in China. And then there's a group in Iran that's done some of this work I wasn't involved with, obviously, showing effects on behavior in autistic kids.
And these are like placebo controlled?
Yes.
They are.
Yes. They're NIH, or one of them was Department of Defense funded, formally sanctioned, ethics board approval, expensive.
Wow.
And I, in most cases, measured the amount of sulforaphane in the doses.
And how significant were those effects in terms of someone's behavior and quality of life?
They were very significant. And in this study, I wish I need a graph.
We can put it on screen.
In this study, for example, the first one that we did in Massachusetts, we checked. We gave them daily sulforaphane that I made in my lab from broccoli seeds. We checked at baseline, then after 4 weeks, 8 weeks, I think 12 weeks, and then then the intervention stopped at either 12 or 16 weeks, and then we did a 4-week washout where they got nothing. And the curves of some of these behaviors was remarkable, substantially, highly significantly different from the placebo. And this is stuff like repetitive behaviors.
I think you need it right away, Simon.
I think you need it.
Well, this is, imagine if I wasn't on it.
But so some of these very, I won't say destructive, but very, very interfering behaviors that autistic subjects manifest were dramatically reduced. So
is that common knowledge?
It's become pretty common knowledge in the autism community, which is where it's needed. But could it use a louder megaphone?
Would it be common knowledge? Is it in the guidelines? Do they have guidelines that recommend specific nutrients or supplements for people with autism?
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it
too much.
I think like in the Facebook groups and the mothers.
It seems a little fringe.
Well, it seems I'm ready to chastise you for saying it seems fringe.
I'm not saying that it's a knock on the science. I mean the at least to me, the concept seems fringe.
Look, the traditional, the allopathic medicine community thinks anything nutrient or supplement is fringe. Unless it's a drug or surgery, they're not as interested or as well trained.
Was the dose in those studies back to that 30 to 50 milligrams? So it is.
Yes, it was.
It's what we'd call that like a physiologic dose, in that it's not that is completely achievable from eating broccoli sprouts itself.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was a line that we used in our petitions to approve some of the early trials. Is, look, people are getting this. Enthusiastic broccoli eaters are getting this. We're just making sure that this is what they get, and that the control groups don't get none.
Yeah, Simon, can you write up an IRB and let's get a test done?
Leave it with me.
So,
is there any safety or toxicity, adverse effects from all of these trials? So there's a bunch of trials on autism. There's other human clinical trials. So I'm sure the safety profile has been assessed to some extent.
it has been, and the answer is there are no toxicities at all. There are tens of thousands of doses that have been given in clinical studies now. I mean, if you look at duration and number of days and number of people, there are none. Interestingly,
Extraordinary.
Is there an upper limit though, where you think, like, if we were to say, okay, this is the upper bounds, I wouldn't push it above this, what would that look like?
Yes. So, let's see. I'm not formally an employee of Johns Hopkins anymore. I guess I can say that. So I took 1,500 milligrams of glucoraphanin, and
Still only have one head. So
I
that's
still only
positive.
have one. I got.
For how long? How long
I
did
just
you
took
take?
it once because I had major digestive discomfort, so I backed off.
Okay.
But I mean, that's
Did you take it in pill form or in eating broccoli sprouts?
yeah, or powder.
But that's
Powder.
a once-off dose. Looking at an acute effect, what would you say is like the upper limit of someone who's like a daily consumer of broccoli sprouts or a supplement?
I'd say maybe 500 milligrams.
Which is like 10
No, five-
cups. Of,
sorry,
that's like 10
500
cups of
micromoles.
broccoli
Yeah,
sprouts.
500
Yeah,
micromoles, which
yeah.
would be about 8 capsules of the supplement.
And from a broccoli sprout point of view,
From a broccoli sprout, I know, people are consuming an entire jar, which is getting about 400 to 500 micromoles as well, and no adverse impact.
And I do that not regularly. I usually have about half a jar, but this jar isn't even as full as mine are. I mean,
Yeah, it's only on day 4, and I ate it on the way over here. So, but
so look,
bit of a pre-podcast boost.
I get so like literally when you're trained and you're aware of the knowledge and the magic of this, like people think that oh, I'm eating sprouts because I like sprouts. What happens is my subconscious mind is saying, oh, this is the best thing that you could be eating. Why would you eat anything less? Why would you eat a Pringles potato chips? When you could be eating sprouts, why would you eat anything else?
Tell you why they would eat a Pringles.
Why?
The hyperpalatability, the salt. Once you
Salt
pop,
and sugar.
you can't stop.
yeah.
I mean, it's
Just to share with you though, the way that I'm eating sprouts now, my favorite way at the moment is I get, Dave's Killer Bread.
yeah.
So I get the Dave's Killer Bread, avocado. So I toast it first.
Yeah.
Avocado.
Yeah.
Then I put sprouts over the top of that, like good couple of handfuls of sprouts, chili, some salt, pepper, and then tahini.
So you are
tahini,
entirely hiding
yeah.
the taste of the broccoli
tahini
sprouts.
drizzled over the top of all of that.
Yeah, look at you
I
go.
can still taste the broccoli sprouts, but I find that personally more enjoyable than just doing a straight up handful.
Yeah.
That
Well,
sounds-
look,
that sounds
let's
great.
go on to something else. Could you talk?
Wait. Okay, hold that thought. So the autism trial, the response, the differential response didn't peak until about 2 months. I mean, so it kept on building. This is compared to the air pollution response in China, where the response based on excretion of these metabolites of air pollutants was almost immediate within a day or two. So there are mechanisms we don't fully understand. We think it's related to mitochondrial support, the energy powerhouses of the cells, but there's more work to be done.
That's actually an interesting point for us to kind of double click on again here. So if someone's thinking about adding broccoli sprouts to their diet, consuming more broccoli or having a broccoli sprout supplement, is this mostly about playing the long-term health game and about reducing their risk of chronic disease. So benefits that they're going to see in decades, potentially, if they're in their 30s, or should they expect some changes to their life experience and how they feel in their day-to-day in weeks?
Great question. I think if you're Doug, and literally, if you eat, if you subsist on sprouts for a month at a time, you're doing different things to your metabolism. I think with me, who eats broccoli sprouts or mixed sprouts at least 5 times a week, I always have 2 jars going on the counter. I don't feel as good, just sort of, that's a general statement, I know, but I just don't feel as good, as energetic when I'm not on broccoli sprouts. I felt like crap coming out here because I didn't have I didn't have any sprouts for 2-3 days actually. But back to the long term, I mean, we started to talk about this earlier and we got derailed, but when you talk about prevention of chronic disease, be it cancer, be it emphysema, COPD, diabetes. By the way, I've been part of 2 now diabetes studies with sulforaphane in Sweden, showing a positive effect
on insulin sensitivity or
on gluconeogenesis, the production of glucose by the liver, and I believe insulin sensitivity, and we saw a more pronounced effect in people who were more overweight, diabetics.
I mean, the examples, by the way, of not just broccoli sprouts, but of just all sprouts on this epidemic that I see of GLP-1 agonists, that sprouts, you take a GLP-1, that agonist lives in your stomach for a week, and then you get another shot a week later. This is very fast acting. You get the GLP-1 release, within the hour, and then it passes through, so you get a good movement and the like, and there's no side effects from consuming this. So I've seen incredible results in weight management by people increasing, and you could talk to your colleague, Dr. Will Bolshevitz, about the impact of fiber. So imagine getting your fiber along with the phytochemicals in copious amounts.
The one thing I'd say on that is because I agree with you that those are beneficial, but as a direct comparison, I'm not sure that the level of GLP-1 would be the same comparing like an Ozempic to sprouts.
No,
that's
definitely
a very super physiological dose.
No, but the reason why I'm saying that is the large dose of the GLP-1 actually lasts in the body and causes someone, to lose their appetite because they're developing that brick in the stomach. So this is much more natural to be able to get high fiber, have movements, get nutrients, and if you're filling up your stomach, with natural fiber and water-based foods, you're going to feel full in a different way than with the Ozempic is psychologically making you not want to eat.
Yeah, I think that's well stated. And back to
are you on a GLP-1?
Huh.
I mean, I saw this.
I don't need to be on one, but I do think they have utility, and I think the research
of course
has validated that for certain individuals that they can have a positive impact on body weight, body composition, diabetes management, even potentially on neurodegenerative diseases in certain people. So I think all I wanted to say was that if someone was listening and they were taking a GLP-1 agonist and they were hearing that thinking, I can just swap that for sprouts.
No.
I would take a bit of a pause on that.
But what I would say is if someone is on a GLP-1 agonist and they don't want to be on it for life, start eating the sprouts. And start, talking to the doctor. But I saw that Serena Williams is now on a GLP-1 agonist. And because she had problems losing weight, after birth. So a lot of this is very complicated. Number one thing, if someone is overweight or obese, all the evidence says is they have to lose weight. And surgery, gastro bypass surgery, is only a few percentage more effective than the GLP-1, and the GLP-1 is safer because you're not going, under the needle in full anesthesia. So
I agree with you though that almost everyone could benefit from the addition of sprouts.
yeah, and look, I think the other thing I was just going to ask Dr. Fahey about was basically preserving telomere length. Like there's another insight that people aren't talking about, is telomeres. And then the other one that I want to talk about is the detoxification of the chemicals associated with plastic manufacturing, the BPA, BS. And
yeah, the telomere one's interesting given how popularized longevity has become and these kind of these biological age clocks. Has anyone looked at sulforaphane and how it affects aging?
Yeah, they have. And there have been studies in roundworms, Caenorhabditis elegans, I think it was, the nematodes, showing something like a 30 to 50, maybe it was more than, it was a very huge increase in lifespan. These are sort of the model, the entry-level model for longevity studies. I don't know that that's been looked at clinically, but telomere length falls into the general category of epigenetics. And in terms of epigenetics effects of sulforaphane is a very potent HDAC inhibitor. This is the histone deacetylase, and this is something that, yeah, you're looking for the definition, but when you've got chromosomes, they got a bunch of non-chromosomal stuff, proteins covering them up, and they sort of open up and let bits of the DNA be read or transcribed. And so that's all involved with this phenomenon of acetylation and deacetylation, methylation. You're screwing around with the covering of the chromosome, so to speak. But I don't want to go there because we could get very technical.
We talk about skin and anti-aging. Look at his skin. How old are you, Jed?
71.
71. Look at that skin. It's as supple as yours.
Well, I'm glad. I don't do anything except
it's
go
really
out biking.
So no. Have you ever had Botox?
No. Kidding?
Gosh,
No.
and 71.
Any lip plumper? No lip plumpers?
Are you kidding? I'm offended, Doug. Hey, I want to go back to prevention though, because
no. We're talking about skin and cosmetics now, Jed.
Yes. Okay.
Wait, could you talk about UV prevention through sulforaphane?
Yes, you can block the sun from its. You can block all the UV in the. No, I'm only kidding. Sulforaphane applied dermally, topically on the skin, we showed reduces erythema or burning, sunburn, in about half of the subjects that it was investigated in. So these are very small studies, but essentially you either on the butt or the back or the arm, inside of the arm, you treat with sulforaphane and then you treat with UV light.
Does ingesting it does that have a similar effect?
So glad you asked. That paper was just published by our group, and this is work that was done years ago, and it's just taken us forever to get it published or to get around to publishing it. We did not see an effect of ingestion of sulforaphane on UV-induced erythema or sunburn, but we saw an enhancement of the detoxification enzymes in the skin, but not in the blood. Everybody measures blood because it's easy to measure. You stick someone and take a blood sample. But instead, we did biopsies of the skin and in the untreated or the UV-treated parts of the skin. We saw increases in detoxification enzymes, and we saw reductions in the inflammatory markers, some of the inflammatory cytokines. So this was exciting, and this was with a dietary supplement.
And that's where the skin cancer comes from, not just from the sun. It's from the burning of the sun, the inability to reduce the inflammation, and then causing that damage, which leads down that path.
Well, I mean, what we did not look at is DNA breaks or mutations, but that's would have been a much more difficult and more expensive and longer.
You want to fund that research also,
so
Mr. Hill?
I'll add that to my list.
But the topical application is I think something that's ready for prime time, because it does reduce burning in some people. Some people, we don't know why, but it doesn't matter, right? If you get a 50% effect or effect in 50% of people, it's better than a lot of drugs.
Is there anyone that you would say is contraindicated to being exposed to a sulforaphane containing food, or a food that contains glucoraphanin, I should say, or glucoraphanin supplement? Often online, you might see some people claim that people that have hypothyroidism or iodine deficiency or things of that nature, they shouldn't have broccoli sprouts or broccoli.
Yeah, the connection with thyroid and iodine is, I think, fallacious. It's yes, you can give someone goiter by feeding them truckloads of cabbage or broccoli, probably broccoli. It's been done with cabbage back in the 1930s. So 100 years ago, they fed rabbits just insane amounts of cabbage and gave them goiters. This is not something, and we've looked at, in fact, there are multiple publications now showing that there is no effect on indicators of thyroid health by sulforaphane. I've got to readdress prevention, because we talked about prevention of various chronic diseases. What is critical in my mind, and this is where getting kids used to sprouts or interested in sprouts comes in, is early dietary intervention, early habit formation. Because when are you most likely to develop, most people, this is all about health span. Most people are healthy after they're born and make it through the first few months, and then may have decent health in their 20s and maybe 30s. And by the time they reach their 40s, things start hitting the skids and they get various chronic conditions. By the time they get to be my age, people are taking 4 or 5 medications for various conditions, hypothyroidism, et cetera, beta blockers for heart problems. And so this overlaying of chronic conditions does happen later in life, but as best any of the evidence shows, it's early, it's dietary intervention earlier in life that matters. This protective effect against mutations and against oxidation damage. So it's well established by the anthropologists and the epidemiologists that it's very difficult to get someone our age, any of our ages, to change their dietary habits. But this is why I'm fascinated to hear what Doug says about his daughter eating sprouts, and what Food Nerd's doing, for example, getting kids interested in the taste early on.
Can you talk about just one other thing? One of the most popular foods, is cooked carbohydrates, which form acrylamide. So what impact can sulforaphane have on acrylamide?
Are you talking about things like fried potato chips?
Yeah, fried potato chips, bread, crackers, basically things that are cooked, starches that are cooked at above 104 degrees Celsius.
With protein, with amino acids present. You're talking about something called advanced glycation end products, AGEs, and these are highly toxic. They are over the roof high in ultra-processed foods. As you say, anything rich in carbs that's been extruded, heat treated, baked, tends to do that. They are damaging, and yes, sulforaphane can reduce the levels of AGEs. Likewise.
So literally, like if you were to find a way to eat broccoli sprouts and McDonald's French fries at the same time,
I would just say don't eat McDonald's French fries, but
of course. But I have a whole series coming out where I'm going to be going into fast food restaurants and basically paying people to eat broccoli sprouts.
That's an interesting.
Sounds like Sacha Baron Cohen.
That's an interesting thought experiment, though. Would the potentially the optimal dose for someone be higher if they have a less healthy lifestyle and are exposed to more air pollution, exposed to standard Western diet, etc.?
That's a good question. I'd say probably it would be more beneficial to have a higher. That's good. That's a good question. I can't really answer it, but my intuition says yeah, more would be better for them.
So how do we get people to sprout at home and to enjoy it? What are the main pain points? So you've set up a company around sprouting. What are the main pain points, barriers that you've identified that would stand in the way of someone regularly sprouting and consuming these?
I mean, the interesting thing is that at this stage of my life, I'm going with the current. I know if I try to go upstream, the river takes me, right? So I'm going with the current. And I think that all trends are leading towards people knowing, like even, Ben Greenfield, bow and arrow hunter, shredded guy. I sent him a copy of my book. He started to sprout, and now he's a sprout advocate, had me on his podcast, right? And so when I think about getting people to sprout, it doesn't matter whether they're a truck driver, or a scientist. I believe everybody wants to be healthy, and people don't know. And the information is mired in complexity and advertising. So the way to get people to start is literally to have conversations, as young as they could be, whether, to as old, just having conversations, having dialogue, going across different platforms. But what we've seen, in this, year over year, 400%, 500% growth and awareness of sprouting in the category. I was invited to give the keynote speech at the International Sprout Growers Association last year. I'm not a member, and they invited me to give the talk, and it was like, I felt like I was the messiah to them, because their businesses had been flat. And now, like the entire industry, Whole Foods down the block here is now selling 1 pound bags of broccoli sprouts. Like 1 pound, instead of the 3-ounce clamshells, they're selling 1 pound bags.
Of the actual sprout, not
of
the seed.
of the actual sprout. And I'm for commercial sprouters. I'm for all sprouters. Like in my book, in the sprout book, I talk about how you can sprout using a sock. You could use a clamshell. You could use anything. What I wanted to do is, when I took sprouting seriously, like I wanted to design something that was sanitary and functional and had good drainage, and anything that touched the sprouts was glass or stainless steel. And then the seeds, it was the wild, wild west. There was no certification. There was no control. So I wanted to have guaranteed to sprout seeds. I wanted to test them for pathogens. So I believe what will get more people to sprout is just talk to them. Like we set up, Redfoo and I set up at the West Hollywood Farmers Market, and we gave out 600 servings of sprouts, and we were putting them on people's tamales, on their pizza. They're walking by. And it was like one of our best days ever, just by being out, with the people, because they never even thought about sprouts.
I bet they didn't expect to see LMFAO.
Oh my God. But I gotta tell you, Redfoo, when he went sproutarian, he lost 33 pounds. He's now 185, and he had his first professional tennis match at age 49. Like he had the energy and the vitality, and a lifelong dream of his was to play professional tennis came through once he started consuming copious amounts of sprouts.
So, gentlemen, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying.
Amen.
But let me challenge.
No buts.
Let me challenge you.
Are you a butt guy?
What?
No, dude.
Let me challenge you both. What? I mean, this.
Can't take Doug anywhere. Honestly.
He keeps butting me. No buts. I don't want to hear buts.
I'm butting you. So I buy that for people of high net worth who have a lot of disposable income. I buy that for biohackers, but I think that market's going to get saturated. And I mean, I'm not arguing with you, but I'm saying I think the market that really needs to be addressed is people who are perhaps underserved economically, who are being suckered by all of this ultra processed food, which is cheap carbs and fats. And getting the message to them is a bit different than getting messages to people who think.
But here's the thing: I don't know.
Shop at Whole Foods and Erewhon.
There's a degree of privilege to that. So what you're saying is there's a population out there where pricing is an issue,
right?
Affordability of a healthy diet is an issue, and this solution here offers a very cheap way, or relatively cheap, relatively more affordable per serve to get very nutrient dense foods into the household for families.
Absolutely. And I'm just saying that I think a target could be with your sprouter, some of these families that are meat and potatoes, that probably need the intervention more than high net worth.
I think we should do
or
something
biohackers.
right here in LA, in Compton, or South Central, or some area where there's people living in food deserts that no one is taking. What I've found, if I can have a conversation with them, they will want to sprout. They will just want to sprout. So we need to just get out into the streets, and it's not about like getting 1 million people overnight. This is a slow. I've been working on the sprouting company for 7 years. And the best signal that I could say is I've never taken a salary. Like, this is missionary work for me because I found my calling. These seeds do not have a voice. The sprouts don't have a voice.
And many of these people that are sick by circumstance don't have a voice.
So for me, I'm applying this energy, because I found like what I feel really good about. Like, I love talking about sprouts.
There's an equality message to this.
Well, when Marianne Williamson had me on her podcast, the entire topic was food justice and food equality. And that's what I think sprouts gives, because
it'd be great if these could get subsidized and like met by Medicare or something.
I mean, it's really interesting. We're looking at, schools, we're looking at the military, we're looking at universities, and, this may sound controversial, but I want to, you look like, how can you remove bad things off of the plate in captive environments, like prisons. So imagine, giving a prisoner, instead of iceberg lettuce, or some processed food, letting them grow and eat the most nutrient dense food on the planet, giving everyone sprouts.
Another setting that would be potentially helpful is firefighters, given the air pollution.
Oh yeah. There's 1 million firefighters in the United States, 1 million. And I think every one of them should have it. And by the way, Rip Esselstyn is a former firefighter, with Engine 2. And he's a huge sprouter. Now he's had me on the Plant Strong podcast twice. And, both Caldwell Esselstyn and Annie Esselstyn are all sprouting. So what happened when I looked at this, the people who really know, like the Caldwell Esselstyns and the Alan Goldhammers and the Dr. Joel Kahn, who I understand is coming on your podcast, they all know about sprouts, but they all have their own thing that they're talking about. They're not talking about sprouts. So we're having to take massive initiative to get the alignment. And Simon, I'm so grateful that we're here on your podcast. Every woman, every man that we told that we're going on the Proof podcast was just like, wow, you're going to meet Simon in person. He's so deep. He's so sophisticated. And, it's an honor to be here.
I don't know about that, but
it is.
I think you guys have an important message. So
can we,
pleasure's mine.
Can we add my my little?
We're not done yet, Jed.
Oh, good. Okay.
We're going to overtime.
Plenty of time, Dr. Fahey.
This is a phytochemical pitch. When you go to a grocery store, a typical grocery store, when you get apples, they have these annoying little tags on them that you can barely read. They have the variety of the apple, peaches, a few other fruits.
Screws up the compost.
Screws up the compost. I want to see those tags on all produce with a QR code that you can scan that tells you something about the phytochemical content of those fruit and veg, and to get people more interested and more knowledgeable about phytochemicals. And it would be so easy to do, but there's no incentive to do it.
Even just like a basic scoring system, like a phytochemical index across foods.
By the way,
and you would quickly see how absent phytochemicals are in many of the ultra processed foods.
Well, they're entirely absent.
They're stripped.
They're obliterated.
Yeah, they are.
They're nuked.
Doritos have no phytochemicals, nor does Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Don't be fooled by the orange color in that case.
That's right. That's right.
So we have an opportunity, right, for every person here to just think about like raising the quality and the nutrition of what you're eating, how you're eating it, and sprouts become affordable and accessible.
How do you encourage someone to sprout at home? Because broccoli sprouts are not the only sprout. There are, like I said before, I like the radish sprouts.
Yeah.
I've had your clover sprouts. What does a good system look like at home so that you kind of time it, because each of them have their own
stagger. You get
days.
You get multiple sprouters, and that you stagger. And the same way people brush their teeth, or they should, a couple times a day. Sprouting becomes very easy, and the main thing is they have to literally want to be healthy. They want to have vitality. And intellectually, people get it when you understand, like, hey, this is living food, and one scoop of broccoli sprouts is the equivalent of a whole head of mature broccoli.
It actually is quite incredible. So like the first time I did this, I put one scoop of broccoli seeds in here, and by like day 5, this entire jar was
bursting
like
out,
jam-packed, bursting with broccoli sprouts, which probably down at Air One would have cost like $40 or something.
Well, that was one of the things. I had a great, as you know, $135 million education with Juicero that I'm so grateful for. But one of the things is like a Juicero juice was $7, and you went to Air One and the juice was $7. Now it's
cheap.
Now it's $10, right? But with sprouts, you can go buy sprouts for $5 a serving, or you can grow them at home for 50 cents. So there's a 10x economic leverage, and the product that you're getting at home is even fresher. And so this is something that we're seeing, this movement that since I wrote the book, literally hundreds of thousands of people are now sprouting, they're communicating, and we're seeing a little movement sprouting.
Where are the main places that someone could go wrong sprouting at home? Because you've been sprouting for so long now. I imagine your sprouts are like A-grade sprouts. Yeah. What's the difference between you and someone that just starts out?
I mean, the main thing is someone's not present. So if you miss, if you start the process and you soak the seeds and then you forget about them, after a couple of days, the seeds will be waterlogged.
Whereas you're meant to soak the seeds for like 8 hours the first
8 hours
time.
Or overnight.
And then you give them a rinse a couple times a day and just put them back.
The real optimum plan is 12 hours a day. Now, this was another public service. I created the Sprout app free download on the App Store for free. And it guides you for free. Add your seeds, whether you're using our sprouting jar or a mason jar, doesn't matter. And it gives you push notifications to remind you of when to sprout, when to harvest, when to rinse. So that was kind of the fail safe that we wanted to have on it. But the main thing, someone literally has to decide is, and I know Dr. Joel Fuhrman, do you want to eat to live, where you're eating things that support your body, your health, your mitochondria, or do you want to live to eat? And are you fantasizing about food the way you are about pornography? Like, that's the real goal. And that's the challenge, is that food is a drug. And to me, it's the number one drug in the world, because it has instant gratification. You take a bite into something, the brain chemistry goes off, the dopamine goes off, and then you're trapped. And the reason why you can't have one, potato chip is that combination of the salt and the oil and the sugar. But with sprouts, I can tell you, nobody is overeating raw sprouts. Nobody, myself included. And it brings us back to pure nature, like an animal in nature, like a lion, the king of the jungle. We'll eat one gazelle and we'll eat every part of that gazelle, and then he'll go nap. He's not overeating. Like, he's not overeating because there's a self-regulating part of the body when the chemistry goes off. But if you're eating things that are texturized and over-processed with the oils and the salts, you're just basically your
those
brain.
Those foods have been created to exploit the biology.
Exactly.
Our biology
and
by clever people who are first and foremost thinking about how to build a business.
Yeah. And so what happens is when you're going back to sprouting, and I say this, I didn't discover sprouting. I rediscovered sprouting and every single thing about it. So the other thing is you have to rinse the seeds and rinse the sprouts in accordance with this, 12-hour protocol, on, off, on, off. And then you need to, eat them, or store them in the refrigerator, for 2 or 3 days in a non-seal airtight container. If you put them in an airtight container and they're alive, they will become mealy because they...
Can you store them in the fridge just in this?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I do all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a...
And what's the risk of like salmonella or some other type of harmful bacteria?
Jed and I was concerned. That was the theoretical elephant in the room. And so we studied along with Jack Smiloff, a data scientist from the UK, where we studied 25 years of foodborne illness, hospitalizations, outbreaks, and deaths. And turns out, like in simple, numbers, regular lettuce is, sprouts are twice as safe as regular lettuce, 10 times safer than meat, chicken, fish, dairy, and, you put unpasteurized milk and it gets even further. So sprouts are really safe.
It's interesting because I do think there's a stigma out there where
because no one defended them.
A lot of folks think about sprouts and immediately it's like, I'm not sure I really want to risk getting food poisoning.
Yeah, because what happens is these other industries, they have lobbying, they've got PR, they've got disaster recalls. There's never been, as far as I've tracked, never been one food recall, one instance of homegrown sprouting, causing outbreaks and deaths. And the seeds.
Well, that recall would be pretty small.
No, it wouldn't.
If you're growing it at home.
No, but it wouldn't be because the E. coli 0157H7 comes from animal feces, which would contaminate the seed. And then if you got it at home, you'd have it.
Oh, so it would be a seed problem.
It'd be a seed problem. Now, when we studied the outbreaks, and I even called Jimmy John, right, who had food outbreaks, and we studied it. Most of the situations with the sprouts was because of poor handling, cross-contamination, and sanitation within the handling of it. So that's where home sprouting, you get the seed, and you can, if you have a desire, and I wrote the protocol, it's everywhere, you can surface sanitize the seed and reduce, pathogens on it by 2 million to 1. As another factor, what we do is we take batches of seeds, we grow out a batch, we take the wastewater and we send it out and see is there any pathogens on it.
So this surface sanitization is a place where you and I do things a little differently. I'm just always, because I started out my sprouting life so long ago, I do surface sanitization on the seeds before I undergo sprouting. But
what does that look like?
I use something that a lot of organic adherents don't like. I use Clorox. I use about 1 to 10 Clorox in water.
Bleach
for 10 minutes. And then I rinse the hell out of them.
That's not negatively affecting nutrient content?
Not at all.
And that's not harmful?
It turns into saline and it rinses off.
Yep.
And basically,
an
alternative, when we were doing, we did a 1-year study with Dr. Greg Gilbert at University of California at Santa Cruz. We funded the study and we researched it. And basically, as an alternative to the harsh Clorox bleach, you could take a pinch of salt and a electrolysis and it will generate sodium hypochlorous versus sodium hypochlorite. Alternatively, you could use glacial acidic acid, also known as white vinegar. You could use parasitic acid. You could use hydrogen peroxide.
I've seen people use.
Apple cider vinegar
doesn't work?
Doesn't work.
Okay. You'll read about that online.
But you could use parasitic acid. You can even just use warm water at 120
What do you
degrees.
do?
What do I do?
And what do you recommend?
What I recommend, knowing where your seeds are coming from and then sprouting.
But with your seeds that you've third-party tested, so you're comfortable just sprouting
I feel very comfortable. For me, my pregnant wife, my child, I feel very, very comfortable. If someone has a degree and they may be immune compromised, they may be old, there is a protocol. We published it. Jed uses it. He's done guides where it says how you soak the seeds in a rapid oxidizing, sanitizing agent for the 10 to 15 minutes. You rinse it off and then you proceed sprouting. But it is literally the amount of issue. When I started to write the book, people were talking about mold, right? So I did the research and I found out like the odds of it's probably easier to win the lotto, small amount, than it is to get mold on the sprouts. Like it's so rare. But now, 7 years later, when you research sprouts, nutrient dense superfood. Like we shifted the narrative across, the global sphere by publishing papers, by doing the research, by doing the work. So now I feel like it is a non-issue.
Does your third-party testing look at mold?
What's that?
The third-party
No,
testing
the mold, basically, people don't understand what mold is. Mold spores are everywhere. And basically, mold forms in a moist environment that is neglected. So, if you have a leak and water comes in, like the spores in the air will gravitate to that, and if not treated. So if you rinse this twice a day, you don't have mold. And as a matter of fact, and I don't know when this podcast will probably drop beforehand, but we developed a full, and I'm happy to give you a offline demo of it. We developed as part of our app where you can upload your photo and see, is this root hairs or is this mold? Is this healthy? What seed, what day, what stage, using artificial intelligence and the machine learning model that I've been working on for the last 24 months. And basically, in all of the citizen science and all of the images that we've gathered, it's all root hairs. It's not mold. So it's even the even perception of people seeing, not understanding the plant pathology, they're misdiagnosing it. So I said, okay, well, this is easy. Upload the photo, send it, and we'll be able to show it.
Yeah. I think when people sprout and they go too long between rinses, the sprouts run out of water and they get thirsty and they send out all these little root hairs looking for
Yeah. Does that look like mold to you?
No, and you'll see often the brands selling them at the grocery store will actually say on the packaging that is completely normal.
Yeah.
Will they really? I haven't noticed that lately. One of the you were talking about sort of the culture of sprouting or getting into Doug was talking about getting into the groove. One of the things that I've found is I always have a couple of jars on the counter at any time.
At different stages.
Usually I stagger them by 2 days, right? I do a jar and then 2 days later I put another one in, and I eat mine after 4 or 5 days. But when it's done, I usually just put it in another glass jar in the fridge. But I've noticed, I live in mid-coast Maine, and in the summer, I go to the farmer's market once a week all year long, twice a week in the summer, and I get green leafy veggies. But a number of times we'll run out. We won't have anything from the market in the house. And my wife, who's not as much of an avid sprout eater as I am, will we'll be looking to make a salad at night, and no lettuce. And so she'll have like a sprout salad, sort of like the kind I make, which is half or all of a jar. Throw some walnuts, cranberries, whatever's in the fridge in.
Yeah.
And so it's an alternative. We all know it's an alternative to leafy greens.
I mean, what I see is people are now, increasing their use of the sprouts. They have them there, and people are really creative beyond comprehension. They're using them in wraps. They're using them in salads. They're using them in smoothies.
Bagels.
Bagels. I call that, you had the bravado bagel, the broccoli
I also
avocado
put kraut
bagel.
on that, actually. The kraut with the broccoli sprouts is a great
very
combination.
good. Ferment, really.
Yeah.
So this is just a whole
A
new,
little bit of lemon over the top.
beautiful Chef Simon. Chef Simon. So look, I think we're on to something, and what I think this is the convergence of is lifestyle, culinary, dietary, and I'm so grateful. Like, Jed was my messiah, because I didn't know about any of this science, and when I was going down the path and doing my research, Jed's work was the foundation of giving me the confidence that there was real magic here. And it was also blue ocean. Like, there was, you look on the market, there had been no improvements in sprouting technology for hundreds of years. People were still using a mason jar, cheesecloth, and a rubber band, and a bowl. And I was using iPad stands and all sorts of jerry-rigging different operations. And I was like, wow, this is, these sprouts are worthy of investing time and resource and energy to do it. So
You've now been, 5 or 6 years down the track from Juicero, maybe more?
8.
8 years.
Yeah.
How does this current mission compare to the mission of Juicero for you?
Well, I mean, the phytochemicals of fresh, like, I've always been a fresh guy. I loved fresh. I love raw food. And Juicero was fresh juice, because all juice that was in a bottle was pasteurized and denatured. So I wanted to do fresh. Sprouts are like the ability to do fresh without being encumbered with having to deal with fresh produce and distributing it and packaging it in refrigerated trucks. So also, juice, as healthy as it is a fractional food, because you are, by the nature of making the juice, you are removing the water molecules from the cellulose and the fiber. So you're just getting the liquid and you're not getting the fiber. Sprouts, you get this whole food. So, like, if I was excited about juicing at the time, it was a 10. Now juicing has probably dropped to a 2 or a 3, and sprouts are at a 10. So I'm grateful. Like, the composting of Juicero was the best thing in the world for me. It was just the best, because
It's a fitting way to use the word compost.
I mean, it went back to the earth. It went back, and out of the compost and out of the ashes, I rose. And now I have, my wife, my, genius wife, Sivan, and we have our daughter, and I have something to be passionate about, outside of the family, which is sprouts.
Yeah, with that perspective now, you can see that experience happened for you.
Whoa, 100%. 100%. I mean, it was painful medicine. At one point, I felt like I was Al Pacino taking bullets in Scarface, and it wasn't nice. What really helped me during that process was that I knew that these people were delusional. Like, the attackers might have been like homeless people on the street. Like the reporter from Bloomberg, she was whacked out of her mind, but they gave her a full-time job to go after and see if they could, troll and attack people doing, interesting things that they didn't understand. So, but I knew that they were whacked.
Was there any part of that in retrospect that you take responsibility for?
Oh, 100%. No, if no one knew how much capital we raised, no one would have cared. Like, had we just focused on, getting the product out and not talking to the media, it would have just grown. but because there was such fanfare and such attention, like I was walking around with a red target on my chest.
Which was deliberate, right? I mean, you're naturally a promoter.
But it wasn't deliberate for me, because at Organic Avenue, we just made the juice, sold the juice, and did it. At Juicera, what happens, you go to Silicon Valley and you're like on this train, to becoming a unicorn. Like that's just the train, and the machine was there. So I was just following within this environment, but it was out now, like I'm back to like my scrappy nature.
So what would your advice be to a young person? And a trend I've noticed on social media is a lot of 20-year-old dudes saying, I made $200,000 in 30 days or $1 million in 12 months, and then offering some type of service, but really like proudly speaking about the amount of money they're making.
Yeah.
But that seemed to kind of lead to, at least the money you were raising, like you said, it put a target on your back.
Yeah. I think other than food, money, and I feel like I'm just going to quote James Frey, who's just a guest on the Rich Roll podcast, who I knew nothing about.
I'm halfway through that episode.
Oh my God. But what James talks about is money is the most addictive drug in the world. The hoarding, the power, the dynamics, the separation between the rich and the poor, and how they can do whatever they want. So if I look at what's important, is find something that you authentically can contribute to the greater good of society. Like that's it. And, the obsession of money and private jets and, multiple houses and cars, like we have not that. I mean, you've been to my house. Like we live, in a modest cabin in the desert, in nature, and we grow our food. Right. So I think, to the younger person, like social media, like select who you're following. Like I really think like there's some good information. I learned a lot about parenting on social media, Montessori and Waldorf and, creative and Wilding. And my feed is about nutrition and it's about there. And if there's anything, else, I block it out. And so that's the whole thing, is like who you associate with and what you do. And like I was not, blessed with going to college or having like a stable family upbringing. So this was something, thank goodness I discovered, health, because otherwise I'd be dead. It's very clear. And health is, made me happy.
Yeah, doing something that's good for society is also something that, like, it doesn't matter what you say, you can't fool yourself. If your mission is actually a net benefit to society or not.
Yeah, and to go to no end, like we were going to do this podcast a month ago. I drove in 4 hours each way, and then we had technical difficulties, and I drove back, and it was still the best ever, right?
Was it worth it?
100%.
Jed?
Yeah.
So anyway, I think this was great.
Yeah.
So I mean, the having a passion for what you do and seeing ultimately net benefit to society is critical, not just for businessmen, but for academics. I mean, there are plenty of people who study pathways in various, subcellular organelles, and they get their jollies because it's a quest that it's like playing Wordle or something. It's addictive. But I feel particularly blessed. I don't like to use the word blessed, but I'll use it, in that I was able to do something that I know is benefiting society or will benefit society. But the problem for academics is it doesn't translate to sales necessarily or clicks. We really have to think about the fact that if we're talking about prevention, if you help one person not get cancer or not get COPD, that's a life saved, but it doesn't show up in statistics very well at all. So you have to have a lot of faith. And I have faith in what we've done and what we're doing. Otherwise, I'd be a basket case. I mean, I'd retire to a rocking chair. I'm now enjoying going out and talking to people like you guys, trying to translate. I may not have done a very effective job of it, but trying to translate all the gobbledygook alphabet soup of science to something that a non-scientific public can understand a little better.
And that's where it takes a team. And that's where it takes a team. You know,
that's true. You have to ask the right questions. You have to come back and hammer on people like me. What are you talking about? NRF2? What do you mean? Well, I still didn't tell you the whole name of NRF2.
Nerf was a football.
Anyway.
So did I. That makes two of us.
Well, thanks. So we obviously went part of the way towards what we need to do, but not all of the way.
No, Jed, your contribution to science, and I mean, you've literally put broccoli sprouts on the map across the world. So we're all incredibly grateful for that work, and thankful for you taking the time to fly out here and be with us today, and Doug for driving out from the desert.
Hey, look, I mean, it was a wonderful thing. And I know that your audience is very scientific, you know, and you've evolved it to have a standard. So, you know, the fact that we could be together here and Jed could have the science and I can have the sizzle makes a lot of...
Oh, I ain't got no sizzle, huh?
Science and the sizzle.
Hey, I had some science and you had some sizzle, okay?
There you go.
Thank you, gents. Appreciate you, Dr. Fahey.
Thanks,
Doug, love
Jed,
you, mate.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Simon.
There you have it, friends. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did and want to stay up to date with future episodes, be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow on Apple or Spotify. Finally, thank you for showing up and the effort that you're making to take control of your health. I look forward to hanging out with you again in the next episode.